Yo. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. Just a reminder that My name is Alok Kanoja, and just a reminder that although I'm a psychiatrist, nothing we discuss on stream is intended to be taken as medical advice. Everything is for educational or entertainment purposes only. If y'all have a concern or question, please go see a licensed professional. Hello, my friends. How's everybody doing today? We doing good? We crushing it? Y'all doing well? We do have a special announcement at the end of stream today. And unfortunately, it is not that I am writing a movie. I wish. And I think that many of you may be right about what the announcement is, but I also expect some of y'all to be disappointed. And this is just a, just a reminder that, that's life. Oh no, people are aware that I am pregnant. No, I am not pregnant. That is not the announcement. So welcome everybody. Hope y'all are doing well. So let me just see if we have other announcements. So we'll do our announcement probably at the end. But today we're just going to be looking at some Reddit posts from Reddit, just to discuss various things that are relevant to our community. And we're going to talk about it. Maybe we'll do like a lecture or whatever. Like we'll see how that goes. Yes. As people are saying, it's not 12 rules for life, and it's not a, I saw some other good ones. I'm not coming out as bisexual, but I love these, I love the enthusiasm chat. You know what we should do is, back before we became decent human beings, we used to be internet trolls. And so what we should do is actually, you know what would be a great idea is if we just said, hey, we're making a special announcement. We're going to be announcing the thing that many of y'all have said we need to do the most. And then what we should do is use some kind of like AI to scrape the comments and try to figure out what people think we're doing. And then we should do that thing. How does that sound, chat? Does that sound like a good idea? We're going to use that as a way to collect information. Man, so many good ideas. Retreat. And someone else is saying 13 rules for life, right? Extra rules. And then we can do microtransactions with that. Each rule is $2.99. We can follow the video game industry and do MTX, baby. No, so actually we're going to go ahead and do it now. We are going to announce a crypto coin. We are starting a crypto coin, Web 3.0, whatever. And the cool thing about this coin is that when y'all purchase the coin, which is called HG coin, as your mental health improves, the value of the coin goes up. And as I don't even know how that works. The more mentally healthy people get, the more the crypto coin is valuable. And so what that means is that if you buy it today, it'll tank in value over time. So then what we're also going to do is there's one coin that we're launching, which is called HG coin, which the value of the coin is dependent on the mental health of the world. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to launch a dank HG coin, which is the value is inversely proportional to the normal HG coin. So what y'all can do is y'all can buy the HG coin if you have faith in mental health, or what you could do is buy the dank HG coin, and you can essentially short our own crypto. And so the cool thing is you win either way. And then we're going to make a third crypto coin, which is called Combo HG coin, which is an index that combines the other two. Does that make sense? Y'all excited about that? Would you buy an HG crypto coin that, right? And that's what we're doing. We're selling out. That's what we're doing. We're starting our crypto empire. Let's go. If only you could short world mental health. So, to the moon. How about to the depths of the Marianas Trench? Okay. So make sure to rug pull. There's no rug pull. It's just a pit. And y'all can just jump into it, right? Because here at HG, we make decisions with eyes open. Is this a joke? That's a joke. It's a tasteless joke. It's a bad joke. I'll be the first to admit that. We're not launching a crypto coin, chat. But if anyone here knows Web 3.0 and is into launching crypto coins, reach out, because we're not interested. No, there's a real announcement at the end. Tequila brand? Yeah, sure. Let's do that. Miss Ruthie. I think she just wants free tequila. Yeah, so I would, if y'all have any questions about Discord, message them on. Yeah. You know, I actually did hear someone sent me a link to a strand of, apparently some people are selling a version of marijuana or something that's actually called Dr. K. I discovered this. Someone sent me a link and they're like, is this you? And I was like, no, it is not me. What general topics? Let's see. So here's y'all want to hop into posts and stuff? So people are saying they're going to invest their life savings into our crypto coin. Joke's on you, Dr. K. My life savings is 0. Don't think that I can't read through that. Yeah. Okay. Subathon? Nope. No subathon. But great. We'll get to the announcement. So let's go ahead and okay. Let's do posts. Y'all want to do this? Let's take a look. Okay, I guess we'll just take a look and then I will listen. Okay. So, my ex consumed a ton of Dr. K content and got a false sense of wellness. Just a heads up, my ex-boyfriend had a huge mental health slide and became less and less well. I was really worried about him, but he felt he was past needing therapy and above getting an intake or any help of any kind. Yet he consumed a lot of Dr. K content. He even recommended that I watch Dr. K because my anxiety was getting worse. Actually, I got therapy and it turns out that my anxiety was almost entirely to do with my ex, our relationship, and my growing codependency on trying to fix him. Well done. Unfortunately, I think it gave him a false sense of being on top of his mental health. However, it continued to get worse. Eventually, I uncovered a very serious drug addiction issue, not to mention other addictions over time, such as gaming, work, shopping, consuming content, etc. One of the biggest things he obsessively watched the content, but never took any of the advice or put it into practice. For example, binge watching the content on sleep hygiene late at night and continuing terrible sleep habits after that. While I did watch some Dr. K and found it useful taking notes, etc., please be mindful that this is not a substitute for real professional help, journaling, meds, therapy, etc. I assume that this is probably obvious. Yeah, we say that at the beginning of every stream and every piece of content that we put out. And don't think anyone has been misled. Thank God. However, I saw the subreddit today and thought I'll leave a message before parting. Thank you so much for doing that. So, let's talk about why it is a bad idea to watch Dr. K's content. Let's talk about the problems of watching Dr. K's content and the false sense of well-being that it provides. So this is something that we've got to understand, okay? So this is a case of someone whose partner was addicted to what sounds like substances of some kind, had some pretty bad addictions, and then consumed mental health content on the internet as an excuse to not do work. As much as I love to bash Dr. K's content, I don't think we can really take the blame for this. And here's the reason why. So there's something we've got to understand about the consumption of mental health content, which is actually spiraling out of control right now on the internet, which we are a part of, okay? And I'll tell y'all what we're doing to deal with it. So the first thing to understand is as someone struggles with their mental health, they recognize that their mental health is struggling. And then what happens is our mind does something really, really slippery, which is it recognizes, okay, I need to do something to fix this problem. But then the problem is that there's a part of our mind that looks at what it takes to fix a problem and decides that it doesn't want to do that. Because fixing problems is difficult. Fixing problems requires sacrifice. Fixing problems is sometimes painful and requires things like accountability. And the mind does not like that. So sometimes what the mind will do is it'll look for something that is almost like virtue signaling for improving our mental health. It'll look for something that says, okay, if I do this thing, then I'm checking the box of improving my life. And if I'm checking the box, then here's the key thing, I can continue with the degenerate behavior I do not want to give up. Degenerate is maybe a little bit unfair. Like if people are struggling with an addiction, that's the slipperiness of the addiction mind. This is what I learned as an addiction psychiatrist. Some people will show up and will talk the talk. And now what's happened is we have a plague of mental health content on the internet, of which we're guilty. And here we are trying to help people with their mental health, but there's something really slippery that goes on, which is that watching our content is not going to be sufficient to change your life, right? And I hate to say it, but that's how it is. So this is what we actually try to do with our content. So I'm going to explain this. I don't know that we've ever explained this, but so here's the thing. If someone is not reluctant to engage in mental health support or improvement, what you basically have to do is meet them where they're at, which is precisely why we do what we do, right? So we try to create content that is engaging for people where they're at. So even if someone doesn't actually want to do anything about their mental health, we're actually okay with that. And we're going to try to engage you in a way that sort of brings you in, right? Makes things a little bit entertaining, a little bit fun, a little bit humorous. And hopefully by the end of it, over time, you will start to make some changes. And this is what we've seen in our community time and time and time again. It's not like people show up on day one and then they watch one video and they're like, oh crap, I'm going to transform my life because I watched one YouTube video by this guy. And then I'm going to transform my life. It's actually the people who do that end up not sticking with it, right? And sometimes like this is even consistent with things like mania, where I've seen a lot of people, clinically who are manic and they like watch one video and they're like, oh my God, this transforms my life. So if you're someone who is watching one video and you're like, this shit is transforming my life, unless it's the Gifted Kids video, that one is fair game. Or maybe we've got a couple that I think is fair to transform your life, to be honest. We've heard that feedback like time and time and time again. So maybe, like 1 or 2% of y'all, you can be transformed by one video. We'll concede that point. But 99 to 98% of people, let's be honest, one video is not going to change your life. And so then the question is, if you're chain watching Dr. K's content, we see this a lot where people will binge watch it, right? The key thing to understand is that information does not necessarily create behavioral change. There's a second component to this, which is the application of the stuff in your life. And that's also why when we make content, we don't just say, hey, here's what's going on. We try to say like, okay, here are 1 or 2 things that you can do to apply this principle to your life. And that's where the rubber meets the road, right? And this is true of other parts of like watching content as well. Like you can look at exercising content, or if you're like me, you can watch cooking videos on YouTube, but watching cooking videos is not the same as learning how to cook. And our content is no different. So what I would strongly encourage y'all to do is pay attention to your mind, right? And here's one really simple test that you can do. And be honest with yourself. What am I watching this content for? And there are a couple of reasons that you can watch it. Well, number one is I'm watching this content in order to get ideas so that I can try to make some kind of substantial change to my life. I'm watching this in order to apply it. Okay, that's number one. And if that's what you really want to do, what you should do is try the thing in the video before you watch the next video, right? Try it. The second thing that you can do to make our content more worthwhile is manipulate the information. So now we're going to teach y'all some stuff about how information changes someone's behavior. And this is the crazy thing. It doesn't even require you to attempt to do something. The key thing that has been shown scientifically to result in like understanding and behavioral change is the ability to manipulate the information. So for example, when we're working in the hospital, right? So I'm a psychiatrist. So sometimes we'll have someone in the hospital who wants to leave the hospital against medical advice. So this may be someone who came in with a heart attack and they are addicted to alcohol or opiates. And so what happens is on day 2 of the hospitalization, they had a small heart attack. They're sitting in the ICU. They're starting to want their substances. They're starting to withdraw and they're like, I want to leave. And people are like, you can't leave. You just had a heart attack. And then the patient is like, no, I want to leave. And so then what happens is the cardiologist calls the psychiatrist, right? And so then I get a page and I show up at 2 a.m. because there's a patient who's 2 days post-MI who wants to leave the hospital. And now this is where we get into a really tricky thing as doctors, because on the one hand, we're here to help patients, but we also want to respect their autonomy. And so what we do is something called a capacity evaluation. And a capacity evaluation involves checking a couple things to make sure that this person is well within their mental frame to make decisions to leave the hospital. And one of the key aspects that we rely on that sort of demonstrates that this person really knows what they're doing is their ability to manipulate information. And so if y'all are watching our videos, and even if you say Dr. K says, okay, you should meditate one every day for 1 week. And you're like, I can't do that. That's totally fine. What you should do though, is manipulate the information, play around with it in your head. What this means is challenge the information, right? So Dr. K says this, and I think he's wrong because of this. That's actually good. Tell me why I'm wrong, right? Do it in your head, or I guess post. Second thing that you can do is try to think about, okay, even if you think that this is wrong, and this is really huge, if you think a piece of information is wrong and you're listening to someone else and your mind is reflexively challenging it, if you really want to learn and change, what you should do is try to understand how that information could be right. So try to take the other person's point of view and question your own beliefs, right? So this is something that the internet doesn't do. The internet is like, hey, I think this is wrong. Therefore, screw them, downvote, cancel them. We never question our own beliefs. And this is how we create echo chambers. And this is how we stay stuck. So if you are someone who consumes some kind of content, this is really common, by the way, right? So we see this a lot with people who are consuming content that they disagree with. And this is this can be political, where I'm going to watch videos of people who I politically disagree with, and I'm going to just poop on them in my head, and I'm going to feel better about myself. Or we see it with things like gender dynamics, where I'm going to consume stuff that has a view on gender and relationships that I completely disagree with. And I'm going to consume that content. And then people are really confused. They're like, I don't understand why the algorithm is serving me this toxic content. It's because the algorithm understands that you actually really enjoy engaging with it, right? And then you watch this crap and you're like, these people are wrong. Ha, 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 ha. All these people are idiots. They're all dumbasses. So this is what our mind reflexively does. So if you want to really learn something, I know it sounds insane, but try to understand the other person's perspective. Okay, this is the second way you manipulate information. One is to challenge it, and the second is to try to support it. Try to figure out, what is this person thinking, and in what circumstances could this be true? Because here's the crazy thing is, if you understand that side of things, you will understand so much more, and you may grow yourself as a human being, okay? So that what you really need to do is manipulate the information. The third thing that you can do is engage with the information either through conversation, like you can post, like we see this a lot where, we'll have video-based discussions on our subreddit, or talk to people on Discord, or talk to people about, what they think about this particular thing. These are all ways to manipulate information. And for those of y'all that are kind of lazy, right? You're like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to meditate. I don't want to wake up. I don't want to do yoga. I don't want to journal. At least think about it. And that's one step forward in terms of applying the content to your life. And this is something that I think we undervalue in our society today. So right now we get bombarded with so much information and so many opinions that we stop thinking for ourselves. And people are kind of wondering, they're like, why on earth do people listen to celebrities and their opinions on geopolitics or the economy? What does a celebrity know about this particular thing? And why do we do that? We do that because we as human beings and in this society today, we have surrendered our capacity for critical thinking. And this is where there's so much information, but why isn't the whole world becoming happy and successful, right? There's all the side hustle people out there, the finance bros, and maybe finance ladies, who knows, who are like, you should side hustle and you should do this in crypto. And like, why isn't everyone a millionaire? Like, what happened? Like, how is this? There's so much good information. It's because we don't think about it. We've stopped doing the thinking for ourselves. And so this is the key thing to understand about consuming our content. First of all, you've got to be careful that there is not a part of your mind that is using our content as a substitute for progress. Do y'all understand that? What this means is that you think, okay, if I watch 10 Dr. K videos, my life will get better, right? And so then you're like passively watching Dr. K videos because like if you watch enough Dr. K videos, your life will get better, right? There's some data, so we're doing an internal study and we hope to kind of formalize it and stuff like that. So we have some initial data that watching our content can improve mental health by about like 8 to 11%. Literally. Like it may actually help. Just as a frame of reference, you know, some studies show that medication improves things by maybe about 30 to 50%, right? So some studies say 50 or 60%. Chances are that further data really shows that that number is way smaller than we thought, and it's probably closer to 30%. So, hey, like I'll take watching YouTube or Twitch or whatever for being a third of the value of an SSRI. Like I'll take that, right? So this data hasn't been third party checked, or we haven't done a formal study or anything like that yet. We've seen a signal that is now like, okay, we should really study this, do something that's a little bit more controlled, really analyze the data and see how much it helps people. But this is also what we see kind of like on when people in our community say, hey, you've helped me a lot, right? So I went to the International last week and that was fun. And like literally hundreds of people were like, hey, your content has changed my life. So when people walk up to me and they say that, I'm like, okay, like maybe we're doing something right. But the key thing here is that you've got to be careful because sometimes your mind will delude you into thinking that you're making progress by doing something that is very, very hands-off. That's not hard, okay? So be careful about that. Binge watching our content, like if you want to, go for it, right? I'm not going to say no. But also recognize that there's a majority of people in our community who will say, hey, it helped a lot more when I slowed it down. So watch out for that. Second thing is, if you want to make it worthwhile, just do the stuff that we tell you to do. Easy. That's why we tell you to do it, right? Give it a shot. I'm not saying you have to do it 100%. Give it a shot. The whole point is for you to learn about yourself. Because I know it sounds crazy. As brilliant as I am, a stranger on the internet is not going to be able to give you the perfect advice. The whole point of this channel is to teach people how to understand themselves. It's to teach you how to understand yourself. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you like a head start, right? We're going to lay things out so that you don't have to figure everything out, but you should test it and apply the concept to yourself. And the last thing is, even if you're not willing to do anything, that's okay. Try to manipulate the information. Challenge the information. Try to understand, for the parts that you disagree with, why is your perspective different from this person's perspective? That's really healthy. And the fourth thing, which we're totally for, is if you look at addiction psychiatry, change doesn't happen overnight. And so this is the fourth thing that we really focus on, and I do this quite intentionally, is I recognize that not everyone is willing to make a change today when they watch a piece of our content. They're not willing, right? So y'all in the audience, you may not be willing to change. That's actually okay. But as long as you stay around, over time, what we tend to see is that people are more and more willing to change. So I wouldn't say binge watch everything and then disappear for a month. What I'd say is like watch a couple videos a week, and then like over time, like your desire to change will increase. And that's actually what we see too, which is that I don't think that, I don't think that people find drastic change in a short amount of time. I think what happens is people who are members of our community, their mental health will improve over the course of months to years. And so that can work. And it's okay if you're not ready to change today. We're going to try to send you something entertaining. But I think the unfortunate truth is that a lot of people will use our content as a substitute for making progress in their life. They'll start to think like, okay, if I watch enough YouTube videos, I will be better. And that's just like saying, look, you can watch enough YouTube videos about working out, ain't going to make you swole. And I hate to say it, mental stuff is a little bit different, right? Because hopefully you can shape your thoughts, and that's a part of being mentally swole. But at some point, you got to do something. And so be careful about that for yourselves and other people. Questions? Oh my God, something slowed? Interesting. Stream? Someone saying, I disagree. Okay, interesting. Give me a second. Let me look into this if stuff is restart PC? Okay. Was that the special announcement? No. So someone's asking, when you said watching your videos helps 10%, is that with practice or just watching? We're not sure. So remember that this is a population-based measurement. So what that means is that if I take 1,000 people, there is a 10% improvement on average. What is much more likely is that there is a variability of how people improve. So there's a much more likely that 20% of people improve by 50%. 50% of people improve by 0%. And 30% of people improve by 30%. That's probably what we're looking at, right? So that averages out to about a 10% improvement. But I would bet money that there's all kinds of subpopulations at play here. Okay. Thank you all very much, mods. Let's move on to the next one. Yeah, but that happens. Like, people will get a false sense of security if they're, watching our content. Okay. According to a lot of people, this is what therapy feels like to them. I'm glad you decided to keep going to therapy. Shall we start? Okay. There you go. See you next week. Okay. So this is a great meme and is somewhat true. So there's a part of this that's true, and there's a part of this that I think is reasonable, okay? So let's understand, when we go to therapy, what's going on. So the biggest problem in therapy today is that it's hard to tell, if you're a patient, whether you have a bad therapist who is not doing a whole lot, or you're doing it right and it just takes time. This is the core problem in therapy, okay? So I had a patient who was in the clinic that I was working in for 20 years. And this was when I was training to become a resident. So this patient had been in the clinic for 20 years. And what that means is one resident will take care of them for about 3 years. And then they get passed to another doctor, doctor. Because when you leave the training program, right? So you finish training and you're done at whatever. And so then you pass on your patients to people who are coming in. This person has had 5 or 6 therapists or psychiatrists over the course of 20 years. And I'm number 6. So this person comes into my office and then I do therapy with them, okay? And I do therapy with this person. I'm a second-year psychiatry resident, right, at the Harvard Medical School. So yeah, I'm brilliant. Come on, let's go. So I do therapy with this guy for a while. And then a couple months in, something about this just ain't feeling right? So I'm sitting there and I'm doing therapy. I started doing therapy 6 months ago. So 6 months in, I kind of talk to him bruh, are you getting better? And he's like, I don't know. I don't really, what do you mean by getting better? Aren't I doing a good job? That's actually what he asked me. He's like, am I not doing a good job? And I was like, I don't know. You kind of come in and you talk about your feelings, right? But it seems like you just come in and you're just sad all the time. And 6 months have gone by and I don't know that you've actually gotten better. Are we doing this right? Right? Because I'm a second-year resident. I don't know how to do this. And he's like, no, I don't think much has changed. And I was like, that's kind of crazy, right? You've been doing this for 20 years. Have you gotten better? And he's like, no. I'm like, what the hell are we doing? So we sort of started with that conversation. So the first thing to understand is that there are a couple different kinds of therapy. So sometimes therapists are sort of trained in a particular area, right? So if you're in a community mental health center where people who are really struggling, sometimes as a therapist, your job is to bail water out of the boat. So imagine there's a boat that's taking on water because there's holes inside and the boat is sinking. And every week, what you do as a therapist is you just get rid of all of the negative emotions from that week, because without bailing water, the boat would sink. Sometimes therapists do this kind of stuff where they don't really like focus on making change over time. And this is what sort of frustrated me with the field of psychiatry in general. Is I had these like brilliant psychoanalytic supervisors who were like, yeah, it takes years and years of psychoanalysis. Years of psychoanalysis. What does that mean? That means 5 years of meeting 4 days a week for 1 hour, 4 hours a week. And I'm not trying to bash psychoanalysis. I think psychoanalysis can be really fantastic. But I'm trying to wonder, like, what are we doing here? And so this is a huge problem in the field of therapy. Because if you really think about it, how does a therapist know whether they are doing a good job or a bad job? Right? Because if I'm a therapist and my patients aren't getting better, maybe they're just severely mentally ill. Right? So if you also look at places like Massachusetts General Hospital, and you look at their surgical outcomes, so this is also like MGH and Harvard, right? So some of the best surgeons in the world are at MGH, and the mortality rates for their patients can be high. And then the question is, wait, hold on a second. If these are supposed to be some of the best surgeons in the world, why are their mortality rates high? It's because the hardest cases come to the best surgeons. Y'all get that? So now if I'm a therapist, like, how do I know if I'm doing a good job or a bad job? I don't know. And if we look at the field of therapy, oh no, F? What happened? Press play again, saved. Okay, we back. So if we look at the field of therapy, we do not check the quality of the therapy that we provide, right? So if you sort of think about it, therapists don't watch other therapists do therapy. And we don't watch them and we don't collect data on them when we don't say, hey, you're not doing this, you're good at doing this, you're bad at doing this. This is what we do in the other parts of medicine, by the way. So if you look at some of these institutions like the Cleveland Clinic or like the Martini Clinic in Germany. So the Martini Clinic in Germany is really fascinating. This is a clinic that only does weight loss surgery. But man, they measure everything. And they developed this program where if your outcomes dip beneath a certain point, you have to go back to a remedial course. And the second, I think the chief of surgery or the second person in the department, not the chief, but the second person, their outcomes, this is the number 2 in the whole hospital, their outcomes dipped beneath like what they're supposed to be. And they sent his ass back to school. Because it doesn't matter whether you're at the top of the department or the bottom of the department, outcomes are outcomes. We do not have this in the field of therapy. We do not measure outcomes for therapists and say, hey, your patients are not improving as much as other patients. Instead, what we have in therapy, and this is like, I'm dissing the field, but honestly, this is sometimes how it is. We have something called peer supervision. Okay? And what we do in peer supervision is a group of therapists get together and they talk about their patients. No one ever asks the patient, by the way. It's just therapists talking to therapists. And the therapist will say, I'm struggling with this. And then people will say like, oh, you're doing a great job, right? Because it's like supportive. No one's ever like, yeah, like I've never heard anyone say in peer supervision, yeah, I think you're one of the worst therapists that I've ever met. Which technically has to be true for some people in there. Because if we look at therapists, there's a bell curve. And some of them are the best and some of them are the worst. And now, if you're a therapist who's listening to this, you are going to take issue with that statement because you're going to say all this kind of crap, like, and it's true, by the way, I'm not saying this is wrong, this is correct, that different therapists work well for different kinds of people, right? It's not one scale of therapy. There's like CBT therapists and DBT therapists and psychodynamic therapists. There's so many dimensions you can't measure people. But I want y'all to think about the moment we say something like that. What have we given up? We've given up the ability to objectively measure the quality of a therapist. Y'all get that? It's like, oh yeah, like your food is shit. It's like, well, different people like different things. So I'm going to keep making shit food. Right? Like this is crazy that our field has done this. That we don't measure outcomes. And if you're a therapist who's listening to this, by all means, correct me. But I would ask you, do you measure the outcomes of your patients? Do you collect feedback from your patients? And this is where therapists will say, yeah, of course, I'll ask my patients how the therapy is going. Well, let's think about that for a second, right? Because we're therapists. And when you ask your patient how the therapy is going, what is the likelihood that you will get a legit answer? Because your patient likes you. They want your respect. And your patients don't want to tell you that you're doing a crappy job. Except when they do tell you that you're doing a crappy job, and when they tell you you're doing a crappy job, what do you do as a therapist? Oh my God, this person is so not ready for therapy. Oh my God, this person is drug seeking, and they're an addict, and this is part of their personality disorder, and they have all these kinds of attachment issues, and they're doing some kind of projection onto me. And so what do we do as therapists? We're fucking like Neo in the Matrix, dodging any kind of feedback. Like, oh my God, my patient is telling me I'm doing a bad job. Like, oh no. I'm going to rationalize that away by saying, oh my God, this person is projecting on me because I can't be doing a bad job. This is ridiculous. The problem is with the patient. This is what we do. And if you're a therapist out there who does not do this, right? And by the way, I was taught by people who don't do this, right? So there's awesome therapists out there. I'm not saying all of it is bad. What I'm saying is that we have a system that does not correct the therapists who are doing a bad job. We have no way of measuring it. It's not like the medical board is like, hey, we're going to pull your license because your outcomes are bad. As long as you don't sleep with your patients or like take their money for your crypto startup, like you're fine. There's no quality control in the field of therapy. It's bizarre. So the challenge with therapy today is you don't know whether you have a bad therapist or not. And this is a tragedy for people. Because what happens is if you go in and you have a bad therapist, okay, and then it doesn't work for you, what do you conclude? You conclude therapy doesn't work for me. You don't conclude that the problem is over there because you're the one who's busted. And then you write off the field of therapy. Right? So this is the problem with therapy is that when you go in, you're like, I'm here all the time. And like this feels insufficient. And what I encourage you to do is take that feeling seriously. And if it feels like you're not making any progress, talk to your therapist about it. Because the good news is that there are a ton of awesome therapists out there. And I want to say more than 50% of them are fantastic. I want to say that 70% of them are pretty good. That's my gut check. Okay? So like, and then talk to them because here's the other thing that people don't understand, okay? I know it's crazy, but we're not telepathic as therapists. And since we don't measure outcomes and stuff like that, we rely on y'all as the patients to tell us something isn't working. And when my patients tell me something isn't working, that's the best thing to move therapy forward. Right? So we can blame the field of therapy as much as we want to because I love doing that. Oh my God, let's bash therapists. But here's the crazy thing that we never do in medicine. We never blame the patient. No, how dare you blame the patient? Because the patient didn't do anything wrong. Well, hold on a second. Let's think about that. If we don't accept that the patient has some responsibility, how are we going to like empower them as patients? Like power comes with responsibility. The two come the same. And sometimes there are bad patients. It happens, right? We don't say it like, oh my God, they're not bad patients, right? And I think it's really important to treat quote unquote bad patients with compassion. So we're not saying that if you're a bad patient, you need to be kicked out of the practice. I think that's bad. But I think that like there's people who like bring you cookies on your birthday and there's people who tell you to go fuck yourself every time you see them. That's a difference, right? In our experience as medical professionals, like there's some patients who are nightmares. And we all say it to each other, but we never say it out loud. And it's like, I don't know how to, unless we hold patients accountable for their behavior, I don't know how to like improve this situation. So make sure that you're doing everything right. And I think for the record, by the way, it's okay to like blow up at your therapist. I don't think you should be abusive. But like sometimes if you're going through withdrawal, like I've had this happen to me where it's like, you know, day 4 of opiate withdrawal and like my patients are telling me to go fuck myself like over and over and over again. And then like, that's part of the withdrawal, right? It doesn't make them a bad patient. Just because you're suffering does not make you a bad patient. If your narcissistic defense mechanisms are full throttle right now, it doesn't make you a bad patient even if you do bad things, in my opinion. There are good reasons why patients behave badly. But that stuff usually improves over time, right? So once the withdrawal is over, people will be like, hey, man, my bad. And I'll be like, don't worry about it. That was the withdrawal talking. Right? So if y'all want to take advantage, like if this is your experience where therapy is insufficient, the first thing to recognize is that your therapist may not be very good. Or what's safer to say, right, won't get me canceled, is that and this is legit, by the way. I'm not just saying this as a meme. So therapy is a lot about fit. So I'll give you all an example. So I was talking to a couple friends of mine who had obstetricians. Okay, so these are people who manage pregnancy. And so I've had some friends who will say like, okay, like my obstetrician was awful. And I'll say, oh, what made them awful? And they're like, I would ask them, what should I do? And they'll say, well, you can do this, or you can do this, or you can do this. What do you want to do? And they're like, I don't know. You tell me, you're the doctor. And the obstetrician or the OB was like what, however you want to do your pregnancy. You can do your pregnancy this way. You can do it this way. Like whatever feels right for you, right? You can eat organic. You can not eat organic. Like whatever you want to do. Like I'm here to support you no matter what. Like you tell me what you want and I'll make it happen. And these people are like, I want you to tell me what to do. And on the flip side, we have OBs who are like, yeah, you shouldn't do that. You should do this. You should do this. You should do this. And then we have patients who are like, oh my God, this doctor is not considering my view. They're just telling me what to do. They're so paternalistic, right? Even if they're a woman OB. And so this is the thing. Like some OBs are like super hands-on and directive, and some OBs are like super hands-off, and it's like power to the people. And like both of them are good OBs. It's about fit, which is absolutely the case with therapy too. There's some patients who I have who are like, you talk too much, Dr. K. And some people who are like, man, it's refreshing to have a therapist who actually talks in the session. I've had both, right? And so fit is important. Doesn't mean that they're objectively bad. But just because they're not necessarily objectively bad, we can't forget that there are some people out there who are objectively bad. And the third thing to consider is that you as a patient should really advocate for yourself and say, hey, this feels to me like I'm getting a couple of drops of water on a blaze that's out of control. And then the last thing to consider is that sometimes this is the way that therapy does work. That you come in and you feel overwhelmed, and it feels like there's very little being done from a week-to-week basis. But you give it 3 months, you give it 6 months, you give it 9 months, you give it a year, and suddenly, like, now you're noticing a difference. Because here's the big problem with change in therapy. So if you look at change in human beings, the worst person to measure change is you. So if I look at myself in the mirror every day, I look the same as I did yesterday, right? Not much of a change. But look at a picture of yourself 3 years ago. Holy crap, where did that person go? And change in therapy is the same way. We don't realize it's happening. Because every week we go in and we're like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. Oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. Oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. But over time, you start to set boundaries and you start to get overwhelmed by bigger and bigger stuff. It's like the small stuff is no longer overwhelming. So now your mind is like, okay, now we're going to get overwhelmed by big things. And that's okay. That's normal. So that's the real challenge, right? And then the question becomes, how can we tell the difference? And I don't know. I don't know if you've got a good therapist. I don't know if you've got a bad therapist. I don't know if it's a good fit or a bad fit. You should absolutely advocate for yourself. And sometimes things take time. And all that is true. Got it? Okay, so we've got a comment from Dawid. So I discovered Healthy Gamer about 2 months ago, and it led me to seeking professional psychiatric help, and I'm now on a road to better mental health and improving my life. Thank you for doing this. Props to you, my friends, for all y'all who are actually okay. Yes, thank y'all so much for going and getting help. Right? Therapists usually don't bite. You have to pay extra for that. Okay, so someone said, my therapist said, stop abusing yourself and just leave the past never went back to therapy. Okay, well, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, that happens. Sometimes we'll get therapists who will say, like, just stop. And I don't know if that is helpful. It's challenging. What makes a therapist bad? What a great question. So let's talk about this. In my opinion, okay, and I'm not... so we got to also dispel a couple things. I'm not an expert in therapy, okay? Y'all understand that? Like, I'm a decent psychiatrist. I think I do pretty well. I measure outcomes for my patients. But I'm by no means an expert in therapy. There's a billion people out there, not a billion, but there are thousands or tens of thousands of people who know more about therapy than I do. So let's just remind ourselves, right? The only difference is like I'm more notorious than they are. More people listen to me, but just because y'all listen to me doesn't make me more knowledgeable. Can we acknowledge that for a moment? So here's my experience, okay? A good therapist listens. A good therapist adapts to your needs. So what we mean by listen is, as a therapist, it's your job to take everything that you've learned and not apply 90% of it to your patient. This is the difference between a good therapist and a bad therapist. The bad therapists, in my opinion, are the ones that have learned a lot of stuff and they come in and they say, oh, look at all this stuff that I know. I will apply it to you. We're going to make you a standard fast food sandwich with no customization because this is what works. Good therapists are the ones that recognize which parts of their knowledge don't apply to this person, which parts of their knowledge need to be adapted to this person. And for me, for example, like in the first 1 or 2 sessions, I try to figure out what percentage of talking should I do in the session. So I've had some therapists who should say you should talk as little as possible, right? And that just doesn't, I mean, I think that probably works back in the day, but nowadays, I don't know if you'll get this, but like, y'all ain't in this for the long haul. Like, y'all don't have time for that. You don't have time for 3 years of therapy. Like, your life is today. You're 28 years old. You're single, right? 3 years from now, you're going to be over 31. You got to fix this shit now so that you can start a relationship before it's too late and all the good ones are taken, all those other doomsday thoughts. Like, your life is passing you by. And I'm sure this has caused problems for me in the past, but what I really think about is, like, this person needs help a year ago, and the clock is ticking. And so to try to really adapt yourself to help this person as quickly as possible. Now, I have had supervisors who have told me why that's a bad idea, and I'll acknowledge that there's some parts of that that's bad, because it's my own urgency, and I'm like, change faster, don't ruin your life. Right? And they're right. That's like me projecting, right? So that's what I recognize that, and I sort of like tone that down, and like, what does this person need? Does this person need urgency from me or not? And sometimes people don't need urgency from me. And so the main thing is that I have to pay attention. I have to listen to them, and I have to adapt what I do. This is the difference between a good therapist and a bad therapist. Now, there are some caveats to this, because if you're looking at something like manualized therapies or protocolized therapies like CBT, you kind of follow a protocol. So there's some less adaptation there. But I mean, that's what I think it is. Like, listen and adapt. And who knows? I mean, y'all may be thinking that I'm a great therapist, but who knows? If like y'all were my patients, maybe you'd be like, this guy's a fucking dumbass. Fair enough, right? I mean, could be true. I don't think it is. I hope it's not, but okay. All right. I wish I was a 10 out of 10. Most people tell me that I'm average, and I know that this is a dumb thing to complain about, but I get extremely envious of people who are actually handsome. I often worry that as soon as I get into a relationship, I will be replaced by a more attractive man. I also hate that I get invisible as soon as a more attractive person enters the room. And I also hate being attracted to people out of my league, especially if you like them for their personality, but you know you will never have a chance with them because of the looks barrier. In those instances, I often wish the women I like were less attractive physically so I could actually have a chance with them. Boy, do I feel this. Okay? So, it is completely normal for you to be an average-looking person and wish that you were more beautiful. To wish that you were the most beautiful person in the world. Right? To be in a room and be talking to someone, and someone sexy comes in. Like, you're talking to this person who's like maybe you're a 5, you're talking to like an 8. But you're on today, baby. You're on. Let's go. You're funny. They're into this like whole Israel-Palestine conflict, and they have a particular view, and you're on the same side of the view. So you're like, yeah, baby, let's go. Like a 7.5, maybe an 8. You're like a 5, and you're like, I've got a shot. Let's go, baby. And then a 10 walks in, and they stop talking to you, and they look at that person. They're like, right? And then you're like, fuck. It's so easy for them. So, the truth of the matter is that if you're a 5 out of 10, you're probably not going to be a 10 out of 10 at any point. But the real tragedy here is that you never needed to be a 10 out of 10. So we're going to take a look at this post, and I'll explain to y'all what I mean. So if I were to say, like, objectively, if you're a 5 out of 10, you're not a 10 out of 10. And this is something that's not in your control. Maybe you can, what's it called? Looks maxing or something? Glamping up or glamming up or whatever, glam up. I don't know what the kids on TikTok nowadays are doing. And so maybe you can pump yourself up to a 6 or a 7, okay? Like, you can do that. But here's the key thing to understand. If you feel like you're unattractive, you have to be super careful, because while you're averagely attractive, and that may be true, the associations with that are not true. But the problem is we believe that they're true. And it's the thoughts and attitudes that we have that ultimately control our behavior more than our genetics. Okay, so I'll give you all an example. I know this is a dumb thing to complain about, but I get extremely envious of people who are actually handsome. I often worry as I get into a relationship, I will be replaced by a more attractive man. So let's understand this. So this is not a truth. This is an anxiety. And then what happens is if you let this anxiety control your life, you will be replaced by a more attractive man. But it's not because they're physically more attractive. It's because you're anxious and you're with a partner who wants to be with you, but you're like, oh, you're going to leave me. Oh, you're going to leave me. And then like you see that they're talking to someone else. And so then you start freaking out, right? And you're like, oh my God, like they're talking to someone who's more attractive than me and they're laughing at their jokes. And this means I'm screwed. And so then you're like, and they're like, what's wrong? And you're like, nothing. 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 And they're like, I don't understand why you're upset. I'm not upset. It's fine. It's whatever. Whatever. And then like you become this emotionally needy pile of whatever. And then they're your partner, right? So they like try to help you feel confident for a while. But as long as you keep worrying, because here they are signaling to you that I'm actually okay with this relationship. But if you have to keep on like making them do that, where you can't develop confidence in yourself, you can't hear what they're saying, then it becomes emotionally exhausting for them. And this is really important to understand. If you are in a relationship where you feel unattractive, and the way that you manage that insecurity is by outsourcing it to your partner is screwed. Because think about this. Your security is now the emotional weight of your partner. And if y'all have been in a relationship with someone like this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's emotionally exhausting. Because every time they feel anxious, what is their coping mechanism? They come to you, they do some weird passive-aggressive bullshit. They start crying in a corner, and when you ask them what's wrong, they don't tell you right away. And then you're like, all right, whatever. And then they start crying a little bit louder, and then you're like, seriously, what's wrong? And they're like, nothing. If you don't know, nothing. And then you're just exhausted by this, right? And then if you're in that relationship, you kind of get manipulated by these people, right? So this is the other thing. We don't realize that there's a lot of manipulation going on. Because they're like, you're going to leave me. And they're like, no, babe, I won't. Or dude, bro, homie, I don't know what you call. If you're a woman, I don't know what you call a dude that you're dating. Honey, maybe? I don't know. And so this emotional manipulation, you're going to leave me because this person is more attractive. You're like, no, like I'm attracted to you. Like I want to be in this relationship. And then what happens is they keep on like telling, because they figured this out, okay? They keep on telling you that if you tell someone that they're going to leave you, and then they actually want to leave you because you're driving them fucking crazy, they'll feel guilty and they'll stay in the relationship out of guilt. And then you end up in this like 2-year toxic relationship where you said, promise me you'll never leave. Promise me you'll never leave. Promise me you'll never leave. And the other person's like, I promise, I promise, I promise. And then they want to leave, but then they feel guilty, so then they stay. And you figured this out. You figured out that the more you make them promise, the more guilty they'll feel. And the more guilty they'll feel, the more you'll trap them. And if you trap them, they can't leave. And the more unhappy they become. And then finally, it's too much for y'all to handle. And then you break up. And then once you break up, you're like, oh, see, I knew it. All along, this person was going to leave. Then you start the next relationship. And now you've had one more person who has abandoned you. And so now, promise me you won't leave. Promise me you won't leave. But more desperation, more hunger. So you've got to be super careful about being worried that you're going to be replaced. And the antidote to that is to work on it in here. Metabolize the worry, right? Where do I get this idea? Where does this come from? That's just the tip of the iceberg. There's also other things. I also hate that I get invisible as soon as a more attractive person enters the room. How do you know you're invisible? Right? Think about that. That's an emotional reaction. You don't literally become invisible. That would be the most OP power in the world. The moment that someone more attractive enters the room, I go invis. That's what we feel like. Because what happens? So this is literally neuroscience, okay, chat? This is important to understand. So people who feel a lack of confidence in themselves have a filtered perception. They have a cognitive bias where you will filter out, literally, you will filter out all the people who are paying attention to you, and you will zone in on the few people who are not paying attention to you, right? And then what happens is there's a chain reaction because here you are, people are talking to you. There's two people you're talking to. One is more attractive, one is less attractive. Someone attractive walks into the room. This person, more attractive person, stops paying attention to you. But less attractive person is still paying attention to you. And you ignore that person. And so now let's think about that person. Because now that person, like you're not paying attention to them, so they feel bad. And they look at the attractive person who entered the room and all of your focus is on that attractive person. And now you're ignoring this person, but we don't think about that. Y'all make sense? So I know it sounds crazy, but there's actually a cognitive bias there. And it doesn't mean that you become invisible. Like, that's ridiculous. I mean, it feels real. And I'm not saying that people don't pay more attention to attractive people, but you don't become invisible. It's not so black and white. I also hate being attracted to people out of my league, especially if you like them for their personality, but you know you will never have a chance with them because of the looks barrier. Where do you get this, y'all? Where do y'all get this? Right? So, I mean, this is what's the most defeating, is that I know I'll never have a chance with them because of the looks barrier. Like, once you know that, that's what gives you zero shot. Okay, so this is human psychology 101, placebo and nocebo effect. If you don't believe you've got a shot, that reduces your chances of success. And I don't think, I think that generally speaking, if you look at data, on average, people date within the same ballpark. But this is crazy, but I know that, I know this sounds insane, but oftentimes people will end up with people who are of a different attractiveness. And why is that? It's because if you look at attractive people, they get so many advantages from being attractive that they do not have some kind of evolutionary pressure on their other qualities. So if you are an averagely attractive person, you're sort of forced to become a decent human being. But if you are hot, there's a decent chance, I don't want to say 50%, it's probably less than 50%, you can get away with being an asshole. And if you can get away with being an asshole, you're more likely to be an asshole. And then what happens is you have people who are attractive and assholes. I'm not saying everyone who's attractive is an asshole. I don't believe that, okay? And so then it's kind of like think about it, right? Because then some people don't want assholes. And so here you are thinking, okay, I'm less attractive than this person. I can see this person's advantages, but I can't see their disadvantages. That's the whole point of attraction. And so here you are thinking that the game is already over when you're only looking at one slice of the game. And so I've seen, hell, I would even venture to say that I was in a relationship where my partner was way out of my league, right? I was 26. No money, no job prospects, no nothing. Just graduated from college a couple years ago and hadn't done anything yet. And I consider my wife to be relatively attractive. I mean, I think she's super attractive. So I was like, damn, she's like out of my league and I'm like a loser. And I'm sure that actually, I don't know if her friends ever told us, but they're like, you can do better than this. And this is the crazy thing that we don't understand about relationships. So y'all want to know what the problem with relationships is? The problem with relationships is that you think you can find something better. Big problem with relationships, right? So if you look at dating apps, we're looking for a finished product, something off the shelf that's perfect for us, right? Because there's this attitude that like, I don't have to change for anybody. I'm me, and they have to accept me for who I am, right? Because like that's the attitude. So people have to accept me for who I am. So if you don't accept me for who I am, you can go screw yourself. And I'm looking for the perfect person. Because no one's got to change, but everyone needs to fit themselves to my criteria. Because here's all my criteria. So like let's think about that. Like how does that, if neither side is willing to compromise, like what's going to happen? So here's the crazy thing to understand, okay? And this is something that for somewhere along the way, like people forgot this, is that a good relationship is cultivated, not found. So everyone's like, I need to find the right person. You don't find the right person. They're not the right person when you meet them. They become the right person over time. That's been my experience with my relationship, and it's what I've seen in the majority of successful relationships I've seen as a psychiatrist. People grow into the right person. The problem right now is that no one is willing to give someone a chance to grow. And furthermore, we've been fed this pile of bullshit that I don't need to change for anybody. I'm me. I'm perfect the way I am. They can take it or leave it. And that's why everyone's fucking leaving it. Okay? So if you want a relationship, 2 things to consider. Number 1, consider accepting an unfinished product instead of something that's perfect. It's not about whether you can find something better out there. I have no idea. It's, are you with a person who is willing to make changes? And the second side of that is you should be willing to make changes. Because I know it sounds kind of insane, but if you are with a partner who wants you to change, there's a decent chance, I want to say upwards of 50%, that you changing is a good idea for you. It's not about like, sure, like there's a partner component to it, but most of the time when partners want you to do stuff, like it's good for you. Like, hey, like you should really be more professionally ambitious. And it's like, no, I don't want to make more money. I want to be at the bottom of the totem pole for the rest of my life. Or someone's like, hey, like maybe you should start eating healthier. You're like, nah, I want to keep on eating shit day after day. How dare you tell me to change? Meh. Hey, maybe you should like be a little bit more financially stable and frugal with your money. Nah, I want to be in debt. Nah. And the problem is that we get our ego gets hurt because we know that our partner is right, that we rebel against it. And then we log on to whatever shorts platform you have, and there's all kinds of people up there on podcasts telling you, you don't have to change for anybody. If she doesn't accept you, you got to plates and you got to do this, and like this is how you get her to stay, even if you're a loser and you don't want to change. Like you don't change for anybody, that means you're whipped. It's like, what are we doing? Like, no wonder like relationships are so screwed. No one's willing to change for another human being, but we expect them to change. Expect them to change for us. If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. Which means that's code for I get to be an asshole without consequences. So a friend of mine was upset because their ex started dating someone. And then they found they were stalking him online. And they were like, oh, wow. They started feeling really good about themselves because the person they're dating now is less attractive than they are. They're like, downgrade. This person totally downgraded. I'm so much better looking. I didn't have the heart to say it, but I was like, Maybe they discover that there's more to a relationship than looks. Because they seem really happy right now. And there's more to a relationship than looks. Because, like, sure, there's, like, looks, but then at some point, you know, if you want a relationship, like, I think it's fine if you're in a short-term kind of thing. But even a short-term kind of thing, like, having one night stand with an asshole still means that in the morning you wake up next to an asshole. So, you know, I think for those of y'all that are like, okay, like, I'm not a 10 out of 10, I'm average, like, don't give up. Because that's when you lose the game. Y'all get that? When you GG out is when you lose. And you think that losing is inevitable, so you never start playing the game of life. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh, I'm destined to lose. I'm destined to lose. Like, oh my God, like, why is life so hard? Right? It's like that meme of like the dude who's like sticks the stick in the bicycle and is like, wah, or the dude who like shoots the dude in the chair and he's like, why would you do this to my life? And it's like, you're the one who's in control. And you've somehow learned that you're not in control and that all these people will only date other 10s. It ain't true, by the way. I want to say there's like a 2 to 3 point swing. Okay? So if you glam up from a 5 to a 6.5 and you luck out with sort of like a 2.5 kind of swing, you can end up with someone who's a 9. Doable. Seen it 1,000 times. Okay? Yeah, the Eric Andre meme. Okay? So, like, I totally get that y'all wish that you were attractive. I mean, I do too. Like, who doesn't? And the difference is that, and I know it's like I'm making, you know, I don't want to make fun of y'all, so apologies for that. But I think there's a big difference. Like, why do I believe the way that I believe? It's because I got really lucky. And I ended up dating someone who gave me a chance. I ended up dating someone who was decent and had faith in me. And we look at this and like, I'm a dude, okay? So like, I can't entirely speak for women here, so it's not my place to say this applies to y'all as women as well, because I just don't know. But here's what I would say. A perfect man is not found. A perfect man is made with like the faith and support of a partner. Right? In my case, I'm a heteronormative relationship, so I can't, I mean, I don't know what the dynamics of open relationships or gay relationship, I don't know what, I can't speak to that. But what I can say is that, like, my success as a dude has a lot to do with the support of my wife. And that's night and day. Right? And so the problem right now, like, the reason that we have people who are struggling right, left, and center is not because we as the humans have suddenly started sucking at life. It's because we've stopped receiving support. Is because we live in a society where people don't give you the benefit of the doubt. They don't give you a chance to improve. They expect you to be perfect right off the shelf. And so I strongly encourage y'all to, like, if there's someone who you have a spark with and they have red flags, it doesn't mean that you can't have a relationship with them. The most important thing is this person willing to grow? And are you willing to grow? Because now we're in a society where no one wants to compromise. And so, like, this is what happens. All right. Yeah, so well said. Y'all deserve to give yourself a chance, and you deserve to give other people a chance. And now we're going to say the thing that's insane. Other people, you deserve to be given a chance by other people. The first two, everyone is like, yeah, Dr. K. Like, I deserve to give myself a chance. Yeah. Let's go. Like, believe in yourself. Other people deserve to give you a chance. Oh my God. That's crazy. I don't have to give anyone a chance. No, like, you deserve to give people a chance. Like, you owe it to them. Give them a chance. How many chances? As many as you can muster. Which red flags are run away versus I can fix him? There's only one red flag, which I think is run away. I mean, I'm sure there's more, but here's what comes to my mind. I can fix him is not the right attitude. I can help him fix himself is the right attitude. That's the attitude, right? Because you can't fix another human being against their wishes. Not going to work. You can support them. So a lot of compassion, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of second chances, a lot of patience. Because here's the thing to understand. If you try to fix someone, what are you actually teaching them? I'm going to fix you. What am I implying about your capacity to fix yourself if I'm going to fix you? Subtly, what you're doing is you're saying, hey, you can't fix yourself, so I'm going to do it for you. I know better. You're not empowering that person by fixing them. And this is what ends up like when you have like women who end up with, husbands, or vice versa, right? Husbands who end up with wives, or I guess husbands who end up with husbands, whatever. Where one person is fixing the other person, you get one person who's a doormat and one person who's dominant. And that may work. And this is where we say like, oh, like relationships should be 50-50. Like honestly, in my clinical experience, like I've never seen a 50-50 relationship. I think it's a great ideal to strive for. But if y'all are in relationships, you know what I'm talking about. Like it's not 50-50. It's something you should strive for. But come on. What relationship is 50-50? This ain't a math equation, okay? This is life. And things aren't just divisible down the middle. And the relationships that are forcibly made 50-50 are the ones that fail. Okay, what I'm going to start doing is I spent $6.87 for groceries. You spent $5.29 for groceries, so you owe me $1.30 or whatever the fuck. I can't do math. 50-something cents, right? 58 cents. Like that doesn't work. It doesn't work. I forgot what I was talking about. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess we're talking about. So here's another thing. So I was at TI, and it was fun to be at TI because I got to be like a normal person. And so I was just talking to people about their lives, and man, like dating is screwed, dude. Y'all are in trouble, bro. I'm gonna do what I can, but this is where I need y'all's help. So huge props to the people who posted. Okay. Why am I the hardest worker when I'm on the clock, but can't do anything for myself in my free time? At the various jobs I've undertaken, I'm always the last one who wants to quit. I'm the one who leaps up to take the overtime when everyone else wants to go home. I'm the one who volunteers to work Saturdays when everyone else is too busy. I'm the one who takes the dangerous jobs that no one else is willing to do. I'm the guy you go to when you need a wheelbarrow loaded with 5 80-pound blocks pushed through 25 feet of mud, blah, blah, blah. I'm the guy who basks in 100-degree heat, and I think it's great. Every day is beautiful. I'm the guy who comes in to shovel snow on Christmas Eve. Basically, whenever there's something that no one else wants to eat, none of the other men want to man up and take a bite, I come forward to take the biggest bite that I can. But when I am at home and tell myself to study a certain subject because it's my lifelong passion, because it's the dream that my entire future hinges on, because it's necessary work that needs to get done, I just can't do it. This has been going on for my entire life. For a little while this summer, I was studying for 30 minutes a day. Pathetic TBH. But it was all I could make myself do. Okay, this goes on for a while. Okay. So we'll take a look at it, maybe more of it later. But so you're the hardest worker when it comes to other people, but you can't do anything for yourself. When there's a hard job to be done, you're going to volunteer. When there's overtime, you're going to do it. When someone needs someone to do something, you can do it. But when you need to do something for yourself, you can't. So there's a couple of core things here. The core reason why we do this is because we value other people over ourselves. This is the root of the problem. The root of the problem. Because if someone else needs a sacrifice, you're willing to make it for them. But you're not willing to make a sacrifice for you. Let's understand that. It's very simple. Other people are worth more than you are. It's not rocket science. Right? Oh, someone else is sick and they need like freshly cooked food. Like, okay, I can make it for them. But if I'm sick, I'll order takeout. Like maybe you're sick and you're not, you're low energy. So maybe not the best example. But the core reason that we're willing to bend over backwards for other people and do nothing for ourselves is because we value other people more than we value ourselves. Now, how does this happen? It usually starts with a sense of identity that is dependent on the approval of others. So this can be a trauma response. It can be all kinds of, not necessarily strict trauma, but just if you think about your life, what were you applauded for? Were you taught that you have intrinsic value? Or were you taught that your value is dependent on what you give to others? What have you done for me lately? If this is the upbringing that you had, or if this is the social circle that you have now, this is going to be a huge problem for you. Because you can sacrifice for other people. And why is that? Because let's think about it, right? So if you're worth less than someone else, if you're not worth a whole lot, you can sacrifice yourself. You can give yourself up, right? Because it's not worth a whole lot. So it's worth an hour of my time to go to the airport and pick my friend up, and an hour of my time to drop them off at their place, and an hour of my time to drive back to my place to save them money, right? I'm going to spend 3 hours to save them $40 because that's what you do when you're a good friend. My time is fundamentally worth less than others. And this becomes a vicious cycle because how do you start to devalue yourself? It's because you're taught early on that you're not worth it. And if you're not worth it, why bother investing in yourself? Right? So on the weekend, you're like, oh, like I should do this. But what are you worth? Why should you do that? It's just for you. And your time isn't as valuable as other people's. And it comes down to ego and confidence. Because once we have an identity, okay, so here's the other problem, is once we have an identity of I don't have a lot of value as a human being. Now what happens is we become dependent on the responses of others to pump ourselves up. So on a weekend, if I spend 3 hours doing something for myself versus spend 3 hours picking up someone up for the airport, and then that friend from the airport, which by the way, they never give me a ride, which is okay, right? Because I'm okay making sacrifices. That's worth more. And our friend says, hey, thanks so much for giving me a ride today. You really helped out. And we're like, oh my God, that feels so good. Oh my God, so good. Oh my God, give it to me. Tell me I'm good. Tell me I'm worth something. I need it from you because I can't get it from myself. And then when they don't reciprocate, we feel bad. And what do we do to counter that feeling of badness? We construct this identity of like, I'm going to sacrifice, and a man sacrifices. And that's what makes it okay. So when other people walk all over me, I'm going to cognitively reframe that as sacrifice. And then I'm going to feel good about myself. And then think about what you've done. You've created a dynamic where for you to feel better about yourself, someone has to take advantage of you. Think about it. I feel good when I sacrifice for someone else. So this is really interesting, okay? Maybe I'll pull up this paper. Let me see if I can find it. There's an interesting subtype of depression called altruistic depression. Okay? Altruistic depression is really interesting. It is when someone feels depressed unless they are doing something sacrificial for someone else. When I'm giving something up to someone, then I feel good about myself. But the moment I stop being altruistic, I start being depressed. And so what these people will do, people with altruistic depression, they will find lost causes. Why do they find lost causes? Because if a cause is going to be fixed at some point, then I don't need to make any more sacrifices. Think about it, right? This is literally, let me see if I can pull this up. Give me a second, chat. No, I know I have it somewhere. I think it's this. Give me a second, chat. Can I look for something real quick? Nope. Yes. Yes. Found it. Okay, y'all want to see? Like, you don't believe me? Let's look at science. Nah? Come. Science. Let's look. Okay. Personality disorders revisited. All right. A newly proposed mental illness. So this is a subcategory of dependent personality disorder. All right. So these are people who are dependent. All right. But there's this very specific kind of dependence, which people don't realize because it's not like they're weak. So when we think about dependent personality disorder, we think about people who are like, oh my God, I can't make decisions and like, I need you to do everything for me. No. This looks very different. These people are very strong. They're very commanding, but they still have dependent personality disorder. Okay. The case study reported a patient with suicidal ideation offered a new type of DPD to advance personality disorders research. The new subtype of dependent personality disorder has a few key characteristics of the traditional disorder, yet reveals features that mirror nearly the opposite symptom criteria, making it unique as a distinct subtype or possibly a separate personality disorder of its kind. The case study patient report proposes a comorbid diagnosis of blah, 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 and dependent personality disorder altruistic type. So let's take a look at this. Okay. Here we go. So here's... Okay. Let's find this. Okay. Hold on. Where's the... Okay. Dependent personality disorder, altruistic depressive subtype, also referred to as altruistic personality disorder, or adjustment disorder, altruistic depressive type, a mental condition where patients have a depressive mood when separated from the act of helping others. The need to help others fills a void or emptiness within. They have an excessive need to help others or have others dependent on them. When detached from the self-initiated dependent relationship, self-initiated dependent, right? So you initiate dependency of other people onto you. Fear of loneliness and excessive depressive mood occurs that quickly resolves when replaced by another attachment or dependency relationship. Now, we really don't diagnose or treat something because there's all kinds of diagnostic criteria that you have to run through and stuff like this. But this is what's going on, right? Is there's a group of people out there who are altruistically depressive. There's a group of people out there who derive a sense of self and pride out of sacrificing to other people. And then what it results in is like, you're just not worth it. So you can't do anything for yourself. Right? You can do everything. You can move mountains for another human being, but you can't do anything for yourself. And in my experience of working with these people, it comes down to ego. It comes down to this idea. So the place to start with this, first of all, if you think this fits, go see a therapist. Number one, right? See if you meet these clinical criteria. I mean, I know we just read one or two sentences. That's not the same as making a diagnosis, right? So a diagnosis is like all kinds of other stuff. But then to think about, when did you start believing that you're worth less than other people? Right? When did you learn that even doing anything for yourself is considered selfish and should be avoided? And if you want to break this cycle, you have to start valuing yourself more. And now if I tell you to do that, it's not that easy. It's hard, right? So now what I want you to pay attention to is if I say, start valuing yourself more, what your mind will naturally do is come up with all these kinds of objections. But. And we're not even going to argue with the objections. It's not going to work. Instead, what I'm going to ask you to do is ask yourself where you learned this. How did you start believing all this stuff? That's the question you should ask yourself. Right? How did I get to believe? I'm not saying that it's not true or whatever. I'm not arguing with you. If you tell me that other people are worth more than you, fine. I'm not going to argue. But just ask yourself, how did you come to that conclusion? Right? Every other human being on the planet is equal. But me, I'm less than everybody else. Right? Look at that. It's absurd. And still, you believe it, fine. You're right. I'm wrong. Fine. I'm not going to argue with you. Just ask yourself, how did you learn to believe this? And chances are, somewhere along the way, somewhere early on, you were taught that others are more important than you. You were taught that your value as a human being, this is especially true of men, by the way. Also true of women, but I guess it's not especially true of men. I'm just thinking about a couple of men, and then I started thinking about a couple of women. So let's give you all one example of each. So I was working in a jail, and I met a 19-year-old kid who was in jail for their third or fourth drug dealing offense. So I was like, tell me about your life. And I asked them, why'd you start dealing drugs? And they said that I have 3 older sisters. And then our dad left. And so mom was out of the picture. And so then my sisters came to me and said, a man provides. And I was 14. And so I started selling drugs because that's what a man is supposed to do. Okay, now some of y'all are going to listen to this and you'll be like, oh my God, women are evil. No, they're not evil. These 3 women may have been evil. But here's another example of a woman, right? So young woman, mom passes away, gets parentified by her dad. So dad, suddenly she's like the woman of the house. So instead of she's 16, has to start cooking, has to start cleaning, has to start doing all this stuff, does 1 year of college. Dad says everything is falling apart here without you. Doesn't actually explicitly say that, but doesn't learn how to take care of himself. So she feels guilty, quits after about 8 months, makes it through one semester, a couple months into the other one, then comes home to take care of dad. He's not quite as explicit about it, but he's doesn't take any responsibility for self-care. So then she has to do it. This is what happens. So what does she learn in that moment? What does he learn? The needs of others are more important than mine. I'm worthless. It's okay for me to sacrifice my future if it takes care of my dad. It's okay for me to wind up in jail for the 3rd time if it means paying the bills for my sisters. Because this is what a good man or woman does. We make sacrifices. And then we become less than those around us. And if we ever try to advocate for ourselves, if we ever try to do something for ourselves, here's the other thing to look at. You will feel a torrent of guilt. The moment that you think about, oh my God, maybe I should finish this year of college, you'll feel this wall of guilt that'll come crashing down on you. And this is what you've taught. And then what happens is we become intolerant of our guilt. Because if we're guilty, that means we did something wrong. So here's something to understand about guilt in the brain. You do not feel guilty when you do something wrong. You feel guilty first, and then the limbic system, and not so much amygdala, but limbic system primarily, goes to the analytical parts of your brain and says, we feel guilty. Give us reasons why what we're doing is wrong. The immoral behavior doesn't come first. The guilt comes first. And then your mind reverse engineers that you did something wrong. Which is precisely why if you talk to someone who feels guilty and it's very tough and concrete, you can try to logic with them that they didn't do anything wrong, but it doesn't work. Right? They're no, you don't understand. And other people have tried to logic with you, but you're no, they don't understand. No one's going to be able to take care of him. And so if you're overwhelmed by guilt, when you start taking care of yourself, this is something that you've got to work on. You've really got to dig into, how did this happen? Therapists can definitely help with this kind of stuff, by the way. Great question. Does every emotion come first? Almost always. Although there's contrary evidence to that, but let's just say yeah for now. Okay? Okay, it's an interesting question. So someone saying guilt helps the grind might be useful. Okay, hold on a second. We never said this wasn't useful. In fact, you're brilliant for realizing that this is useful. So when we're someone who sacrifices for everyone around us, that enhances our relationships in many ways. And in fact, the reason we develop this way of thinking is because it's useful. Right? So if you're a 14-year-old boy and your sisters tell you a man provides, if you say no, what happens to you? Your dad has disappeared. Mom is out of the picture. It's just you and your 3 sisters. If you say, because you're 14, you say, no, I ain't a man. I'm a boy. You can't say that. Right? Like, you can't do that. So guilt is absolutely useful. Guilt is one of the most useful emotions that we have. It is the most powerful change. Well, guilt, not necessarily shame is stronger, but guilt is guilt is the signal that our brain gives us to allow us to conform to other humans. Guilt is critical for the maintenance of relationships. It's very useful. Incredibly useful, which is why everyone feels it. Y'all get that? It's not a bug, it's a feature. Right? So it's very useful. It's just out of control. So remember that all of your emotions are useful. Whether they're damaging or helpful on balance depends on who's in control. Are you in control, or is the emotion in control? So emotions are primarily serve 2 positive functions in my mind. This is how I break it down. An emotion is a source of information and a source of motivation. And if you are not in control of those 2 things, so when you feel an emotion, the first thing you should do is ask yourself, what is this emotion telling me? Because here's the thing about an emotion. Your brain is processing all kinds of information that you're not consciously aware of. So an emotion is basically a TLDR for a gigantic pile of information. I'll give you all just a great example. So let's say that I walk into a room of my friends, and one of my friends says, yo, it smells like Updog. And everyone's looking at me, right? And I don't quite understand what's going on. And I walk in and I'm like, hold on a second, something's weird is going on, right? So I don't know if y'all have ever walked into a room and your brain is like, be on guard. You're in danger. And you start to feel anxious. And then like you see that someone's like trying to suppress a smile and they're like, yeah, it does smell like Updog. And they like, everyone's like looking at you and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? Right? So then you feel anxious. That's your brain interpreting all these tiny little signals, this very flattened affect that everyone has where they're not smiling. So they're not relaxed, because normally when you walk into a room with your friends, you're like, yo, dude, what's up? But they don't say that. Everyone's like watching you and they're like not smiling. And then you start to panic a little bit. Right? So ask yourself, what is this emotion telling me? The second thing is, what is this emotion driving me to do? And then to take a step back from your default reaction to the emotion, that's when it controls you. When you react to the emotion without thinking it through. And instead, take a step back and ask yourself, okay, in this situation objectively, what do I want to do? Not what do I feel like doing? And then what you want to do is use that emotion as fuel. Right? So just to give you all an example, if I get like a C on a test and I feel ashamed of myself, I feel shame so bad. Oh my God, I'm an idiot. I'll never be able to do this. And then my mind tells me, let's cheat, bro, because you're not going to be able to get an A. And we really need to get an A. And it's really important to get an A. This isn't good enough, so let's cheat. And so the emotion is driving you towards performance improvement. But if you listen to it and you end up cheating, then you're going to be in trouble. Right? So you still want to pay attention to what's it telling me. It's telling me that this is important. Do I actually want to cheat? It may be what I think is the best, but the more I think about it, okay, I really need to spend more time on this, and try to come up with some alternative to what your mind tells you to do when you're feeling emotional. Oh my God, I want to break up. Oh my God, I want to get back together. Hold on a second. Y'all know what I'm talking about? It's the yo-yo. Oh my God, why did I get back together with this person? Don't yo-yo. Just pay attention. Okay, what is it that you want? Well, I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling unloved. Okay, what can I do to build something that will satisfy that? And that's really how you utilize emotions. Okay? All right. Let's do some other stuff real quick. How do I fix my son's gaming addiction? He is going to repeat the 9th grade. My son is 15 years old and he is diagnosed with ADHD and autism. He spends a lot of his time playing World of Warcraft, which his dad also plays and pays for the game. Nice. I put a strict schedule on him daily, which includes homework first before screen time and gaming is restricted to 2 hours per day or until 8 p.m. when dinner is ready, after which he showers, brushes his teeth, and goes to bed at 9:30. Trying to get a 15-year-old to shower and brush his teeth is a daily struggle. Womp womp. I didn't think much of it until I have received complaints from his teachers about him not engaging with class, misbehaving, and not doing his schoolwork. I also received a call from the school stating his grades are so bad that he is going to stay in 9th grade next year. I immediately told my husband to cancel the subscription and uninstall all of the games on the family computer. I set it up so he cannot install anything on it without my password. I've not seen the subscription on our joint account. I did not realize until later that he circumvented the boundaries. That's my 15-year-old boy with autism and ADHD. Let's go. I placed on him by lying and saying he has no homework so he can game. He snuck our old laptop in his room to play in the middle of the night past bedtime, and he has been cutting school to play the game in the library. I received a phone call later that day telling me that he hasn't been in school. He was grounded immediately. I took away his Switch, iPhone, and removed the keyboard and mouse for 2 weeks, and he is expected to be home right after school, and that the punishment will be extended for 2 weeks after he is not back by 3:30. For the most part, he complied. After realizing that he's going to repeat the 9th grade, the confiscation will be indefinite. I enrolled him in summer school and told him he will get his stuff back if he passes summer school and have a minimum grade of level of C on all the classes consistently next year. Ever since I confiscated his games in the computer, he has been snapping at me, giving me and his father a bad attitude. When I tell him to do chores, he barely finishes them and does it most passive-aggressive manner and half-assed. He has been getting into periodic temper tantrums and breaking things like a 2-year-old. He has become extremely disobedient. The last straw was when I found a 60-day subscription card in his room, which he used his allowance to pay for behind my back and sneaking into the library to play the game and sneaking a laptop I've already hid into his bedroom to play. I've stopped giving him money and I have asked my husband to do the same. I'm at my wit's end with him and I have no idea what to do. I've tried finding other activities for him to do, but everything but that stupid game bores him. Even Netflix doesn't satisfy him. He's very easily bored, and when he's bored, he gets incredibly obnoxious. I've spoken with his doctors who increase his Adderall dose. Nice! Throw more Adderall at the problem. And have given him additional medication. Ooh, additional medication. I'm only seeing a small difference. Parents, help. All right. So, sometimes we have children who like to play video games. And then as parents, we stop them from playing video games because the video games are harmful. So I will stop it because we can't afford to have you harmed. And then we get into this, what I call is kind of like it's an arms race. Okay? Parent institutes punishment. Kid levels up his stealth, bypasses. Parent institutes more punishment. Child develops hacking skills, bypasses it. All right, so this is like it's an escalating arms race of punishments followed by bypassing. So if you're in this situation, right, and if y'all are like me, you've been the child in the situation where you figured out, because here's the thing, you know tech better than your parents do. You're going to win this game, right? And then parents try to force you to do something, and what do? You're going to half-ass it. Because it's about the letter of the law, right? Because as a kid, you're not bought in. You don't agree with this crap. So you will check the boxes. You will do the minimum required to get the game back. Because this is a war where parents are taking it away and you're going to take it back. This is what happens. So how do we fix this? So this is the first thing that we say in HG, right? So first of all, it's healthy gamer. It's not no gaming. No gamer. That's not what we say. Healthy gaming. So when you're dealing with someone who's got an addiction, You can't make them sober. First thing to understand. Impossible to be sober for someone else. You can restrict as much as you want to as a parent. And this is what changes when you're talking with 15-year-olds, right? So like it's easier to restrict when you have a 9-year-old. Harder to restrict when you have a 15-year-old. Because they're going to bypass you. Then they're going to go over to a friend's house and they're going to play there, right? Cutting class. So when you took the game away at home, what did your child actually do? They started cutting class and going to the library. Their grades got worse. Your interventions are having the opposite effect. And that is always going to happen when it is you against your kid. Because they're not bought in. The other problem that I frequently see is if we look at this post, okay, I put a strict schedule. I didn't think much of it. I also received a call. I immediately told my husband. Sounds like husband listened. I've not seen the subscription. I did not realize. When I tell him to do chores, he barely finishes. I've stopped giving him money. I've asked the husband to do the same. I'm at my wit's end. So when it comes to parenting a kid with video game addiction, you need parents on the same team. And it sounds like dad is not opposing mom, but it also sounds like dad is not involved. So what does the kid think in this situation? Dad's a doormat. Dad and kid used to play together, and now the dad is listening to mom. So now what's actually happened is dad is being bullied by mom, and the kid perceives it this way. So now, like, the reason that this parent is at their wit's end is because it's not one-on-one. It's dad and kid against mom. But mom is saying, but he's doing everything I'm asking. But he's not actively involved. So let me ask y'all a simple question. Okay, so y'all are gamers, right? If you've got one parent who plays a game with you, and y'all raid together, and you've got another parent who takes the game away, or tells you that you should stop playing, which parent are you more likely to listen to? If the parent who raids with you comes and says, hey, bro, you should really do your work, and that's more important than raiding right now. Like, who are you going to listen to? This is the problem. So in any kind of gaming addiction kind of scenario, the goal is not restriction. The goal is to teach restraint. The goal is independence. What is your job as a parent? It is to prepare your child for the world. And I hate to break it to you, but if you force them into passing classes while creating this arms race and jacking up your military might in terms of parental enforcement, what do you think is going to happen when the kid goes to college? What do you think is going to happen when kid has a job? What are you going to do? Are you going to force them to study? Are you going to move in with them when it goes to college? Are you going to make sure that they have their Monday morning huddle ready when they're in year 2 of their job? How long are you going to parent? And this is the problem. This is the problem with parents, right? We're not willing to let our kids repeat the 9th grade. Like, oh my God, this is a disaster. What does the kid want to do? Right? So this is where I would strongly recommend you have a conversation with your child about what do they want? What do they want out of life? What do they think about failing the 9th grade? Because you can't, you can force them, but only so far. And I think at some point, like you can try to set as many limits as you can to protect them from failure. But then what you end up doing is you become the enemy, and like they detest you for it, and they end up bypassing you and failing anyway. So they can fail with your help, or they can fail without your help. But the failure is still the same. And so I think it really starts with a conversation, which is what we're all about here at HE. It's like a conversation where, what do you want from your life? Do you want to stay in the 9th grade for the next 3 years? Would you rather just drop out of school? Like, what do you want to do? What do you want from your life? And we as your parents, like, this is what our responsibility is. This is what our job is. If you want to play games, like, we want to support that, but you need to be doing this other stuff instead as well. What gets in the way of that? These are the kind of conversations that you need to have, because you can't make someone be sober. Now, this issue is further complicated because the kid has autism. So there's data that shows that the worst kind of games for someone with autism to play are MMORPGs like World of Warcraft. MMORPGs have the highest rate of tantrums and other kinds of behavioral disturbances in autism. Games are highly addictive. And something about the neuroatypical mind for a kid with autism, it can be very, very satisfying to play WoW. And here's the thing to understand. When you have a kid with autism, they're playing the game of life, and no one explains the rules. And furthermore, they have certain empathic difficulties, have difficulty doing things like making eye contact, forming social connections, reading between the lines. So they're playing the game of life with like either the mouse or the keyboard or the monitor unplugged. So life is hard. And this is why they retreat into video games, because they don't know how to play the game of life. And that's not their deficiency. It's that their brain is different in some ways that makes it hard for them to play a normal game of life. Now, along comes World of Warcraft. We have community, we have challenge, we have a character that I can customize, we have an endless amount of content, and suddenly the most important thing is we have something where the rules are clear. So why would I want to play this game where I get made fun of? It's hard for me. I don't understand how everyone's able to do this, when I can play this game over here that makes me feel good about myself. And these are the kinds of things where if you have a kid with autism, you know, and hopefully if y'all have autism, you had parents who were able to do this, what you really have to do is help them play the game of life. And the more that you're able to help them engage, it's not about taking the game away. This is where parents trip up. They think the game is the problem. The game is absolutely contributing. But you take the game away, but you're not giving them something to replace it with. Right? It's about encouraging their engagement with life through conversation, through understanding, and sometimes through consequences. And you say, okay, the consequences, I took the game away. And then your kid started cutting class. So now I'm going to take the money away. I'm going to take everything away. I'm going to take everything away until they can't ever play the game. And do you think suddenly, if you take everything away, they're going to wake up one day and be like, yay, I love school. I'm going to get straight A's. They will do the minimum required to get access to the game again. And now what have you done as a parent? You've made all of the thing about the game. Do you guys see that the game is the only thing of value? You've actually worsened the problem because everything that they do is in service to the game. The game becomes their God. And anything that gives me access to the divine. Instead of creating other things in their life through punishment, you make it more and more and more about the game. If I do this, do I get the game? If I do this, do I get the game? If I do this. So the only thing in their mind is the game. It's become the ultimate. So this is the problem with restriction. You're actually valuing that thing higher. So I think if you're a parent who's stuck in this situation, I would talk to your medical professionals about psychotherapy instead of throwing medication at the problem. I think it also requires two to parent and not a general and a soldier. And also to understand that, like, if you're in this situation where you have a parent who plays games with the kid, setting limits is going to come way better from the parent who plays games. Right? So like, let's say I've got two friends. One of my friends is a drinking buddy and one of my friends is sober and vegan. Not that the two have to come together, but for some reason I felt like tossing that in. Nothing wrong against veganism. And then if your vegan sober friend is like, bruh, you drink too much, or girl, you drink too much, you're less likely to, if you've got some degenerate guy who's like, going drinking with you, or we're gamers, right? So forget about drinking. Let's talk about games. Let's say you've got a friend who plays City Skylines 2, and you've got a friend who's been queuing up with you in LOL or Dota or MOBA of choice for the last 15 years. And one of your friends is like, bruh, you should stop playing that MOBA. You're like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. But if your friend who plays MOBAs with you is like, hey, I think MOBAs are ruining your life, who are you more likely to listen to? Right? When your degenerate friend is like, hey, you're playing too much, who are you more likely to listen to? So parenting a kid who's got a problem with games is not a solo job. And this is where, like, the problem is that you're at your wit's end because your partner's not involved. You're doing the work of two, and then you're going to run out of wit. Right? And have a conversation with kid. What do you want from your life? What are you excited about? What are you not excited about? You're 15. Just because your kid has ADHD and autism doesn't mean that he's not attracted to someone. Men, women, something in between, who knows? right? Like, what do you think? How do you think WoW is going to work for your romantic relationships? Is that something that's important to you? Is friendship important to you? Is success important to you? Is money important to you? Have these kinds of conversations and get them on your side, because when y'all can find some common ground, when your kid comes to you and says, this is important to me, and then you say, okay, I will help you achieve your goals, but as a part of that, I think we're going to have to be careful with the gaming. I'm not saying you don't have to play. I'm just saying if you want to have a girlfriend one day, like, you may want to start going to the gym, right? So, like, I can take you to the gym 3 days a week if you want, right? And someone's saying, found my husband in WoW. Absolutely, dude. 2 of my friends got married who played WoW together. And WoW brings people together. I've even seen, like, weddings in World of Warcraft. So it's not, that's my point, is that the game is not evil, right? It's the lack of relationship with your kid. It's the lack of, okay, what do we want from life? And if the game gives us what we want, then that's fine. If it doesn't give us what we want, then we need to find that common ground, and that's how we build with it. Okay, next. I was the ADHD gamer child whose parents blamed video games. Ah, this is cool. Now that I'm older, with resentment and trauma, I want to mend things. Posted by Ding Dong Shamalong. One of us, chat. Literally one of us. All right. Shortly before I went into middle school, my mom started a business. She didn't have the time to constantly be there for me anymore, and my father was more of a distant mediator. Wow, chat. Sound familiar? She would get home from long hours at work, find that I had missing assignments, and we would get into fights every other night. I used Minecraft to cope with my unstable home life and emotions, so my mother ended up blaming video games for being evil, addictive influences. She pulled a classic move of turning off the internet, taking them away, requiring them to be certain places at bedtime, etc. Every time I told her that I wasn't addicted, she wouldn't listen, because I did play video games a lot, but it was actually that I was using it as a form of escapism and had horrible mental health. I was also diagnosed with ADHD, but by the time my mom backed away and tried to get me help, I hated her for all the stress, fights, and ruining my mental health in general, as if I wasn't struggling by myself enough. When I started thriving in life at school by my own volition, she still refused to let me play video games, so I talked with my dad and he bought a Nintendo Switch behind my mom's back. Ah, now it's fun, right? So now we've got mom and dad fighting, doing things behind each other's back. This is a recipe for success. She found it from snooping in my room. Ooh, snooping. Sounds like we're in an arms race again. And freaked out. So this hatred towards video games persisted after I was getting A's and making friends like a grudge. Now I am 20. My parents divorced a year before I graduated high school. Would be cynical to say who's surprised. That's mean. So we're not going to say that. And then now that I'm in college, I look up to my dad while I still resent my mom. Remember, chat, this is like a mirror of this other one. I wonder if this is the same situation. Recently, my mom has been breaking down at family gatherings like dinner or holidays about how she is sorry and she wants to fix things, yet she still doesn't listen to me. She still makes snide comments about how video games are evil. Just the other night at dinner, my brother, an extremely successful and ambitious person, tried to tell her that he was excited about creating a video game, and she said, "Wow," as if there's not enough of those in the world, with a passive-aggressive smile. My brother called her judgmental and she got defensive. She says she is sorry but is unwilling to listen. For the first time, I actually chimed into this conversation. I said that she needs to work on herself before I actively want to spend time with her or text her. She said she's sorry and she loves me, but that doesn't help. She refuses to be sorry for all of the little things, and she did, and refuses to listen when I tell her what I think. I don't want a general apology. I know that she understands she is somehow at fault for messing our relationship up, and I know it was out of care for me, but that isn't the problem. The problem is that she somehow still makes conclusions about me, like the video games were the reason I was doing poorly in school, and refuses to accept that these are wrong. I know what she did wrong. She just refuses to listen. My opinions are an attack on her. She says she's sorry and she loves me over and over again, but if she's unwilling to listen to my perspective, then I don't care. I already know she loves me. Saying that doesn't help and is beginning to sound like an excuse for her actions. However, I know that going no contact with her would crush her. She is still human and still my mother. I'm not going to leave her behind and abandon her because I also think that some part of me will be forever unsettled without resolving things with her. What can I do? What a fantastic post. So, I'm so proud of this community for posting stuff like this. So let's understand a couple of things. The first thing to understand is that if you're trying to repair a relationship, saying I'm sorry, which can be true, and saying I love you, which can be true, is not necessarily sufficient for repair. Right? So let's understand this. When someone says I'm sorry, I have no doubt that this person's mother, when they're at family gatherings, is filled with regret. And when we're filled with regret, we say, I'm sorry. And then we love them, right? We say, I'm sorry and I love you, because these are things that we feel in this moment. The key thing about sorry that a lot of people don't understand, saying I'm sorry doesn't fix anything. Right? I don't know if you've seen these non-apologies. I'm sorry you feel that way. This is something we do really well as therapists. And sometimes it's reasonable, right? Because people are projecting. But I'm so sorry that you feel that way. I didn't say I did anything wrong. I'm just sorry that your stupid ass feels this way because you're so narcissistic and you didn't... Right? We got to be careful about that. So here's the main thing. So if someone keeps on saying, I'm sorry, and they don't listen to you, what do you do? So here's the question I would ask them. What are you willing to do if you're sorry? What is your sorry worth? Right? What changes can I expect from you? I understand that you regret it, and I see that that's genuine. But going forward, how do you plan on changing this? So this is because for them, they don't realize that saying I'm sorry isn't enough. Right? So you ask them an open-ended question and put the ball in your court. What is your sorry worth? What's your understanding of what I'm upset about? What did you think you did wrong? Because what we see here is actually something really subtle, which is sort of a self-centered parent. Because the parent thinks a particular thing. I don't care what you think. I don't care about your beliefs, and I'm not going to listen to you. And even now, with all of their sorries, that's just as self-centered. Because I don't care what you think. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's about me. It's about my regret, my love for you, my regret, my love. I don't care about your feelings. I'm not listening to your feelings. My regret, my love. I'm crying. I'm hurting. Me. And then what happens? This is what happens, right? So when people are kind of self-centered like this, and things start to go wrong, we look for something to blame. Because as long as I can blame video games, then I don't need to take responsibility as a parent. It's not my fault. It's the video game's fault. Y'all see that? So now this person is running in, and if y'all are working with someone who's kind of self-centered like this, you got to be super careful. Because in order for this person to admit that video games are not the problem, that means something else has to become the problem. And that means that I have to take responsibility. And I don't want to do that, because if your life is screwed up, and this is what's hard for parents, right? The hardest thing for a parent to do is to admit that we did something bad for our kids. The hardest thing to do. Because I hurt my kid. I screwed up. The one thing that I'm supposed to do well, that is the most important thing to me, I screwed up, and I screwed up because I was narcissistic and I didn't listen. Hard to do that. Which is why it's so hard for them, right? So that now I've demonized the games, and the games are evil. And so I think really, literally what you do is you ask the parent, what kind of changes are you willing to make? I understand that you're sorry. I accept your apology. And this is where you got to be subtle, right? I accept your apology. Going forward, I forgive you for whatever you regret. Going forward, how I engage with a relationship with you basically depends on whether you're going to repeat the past or not. So I understand that you regret it. What are you willing to change going forward? And that's where, like, they're going to get squirrely. Like, they don't, no, I'm just supposed to say, I'm sorry. I don't need to change. I don't have to do anything. Right? So you just ask them, what's your sorry worth? What does this mean for us going forward that you're sorry? Help me understand. Like, what does this mean? Are you going to change the way that you talk to me? I'll do anything. Okay. Listen. What are you hearing me say? So I would start not by convincing him, just asking lots of questions. Open-ended questions. What do you think about my gaming? What do you think I struggled with? Why do you think I was gaming so much? Because they're addictive. And that's when you can say, like, so when someone has a particular view and they say they're going to listen, this is the technique that you can use to see if they're actually going to listen. You can tell them, I'm about to tell you something that is different from what you think. Let's see if you're capable of listening. The games weren't the problem. My emotional health as a teenager was the problem. The games were an antidote. They were a symptom, not the cause. What did you hear me say? Right? And they're going to be like, the games are the problem, but blah, blah, blah. And that's when, like, you give them a shot, and then you can say, I hear that you said you were going to listen, but I don't hear you actually listening. I hear you sharing your opinion again and not really listening to mine. You're allowed to have your opinion. I have no problem with it. But going forward, I just don't want to engage in this relationship because it's falling on deaf ears. I'll see you at holidays and stuff like that. I love you. I'm grateful that you're sorry, and I forgive you for that. I still love you. I'm grateful that you love me. At the same time, I don't see that you've actually changed much. So I just, you were part of the problem back then, and you can say that if you want to. Let them have it, right? You were part of the problem back then, and I just can't have you as a huge part of my life until you're able to change this. Just say it to them. And they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Okay. What am I saying? I don't know. What do you want me to say? They'll say that. I don't want you to say anything. I want you to listen. And then you kind of peace out. You can say, we can try this again in a week. So this is the other thing to understand when dealing with people like this. You don't want to go 10 rounds all at once. You want to go one round and then you pull out. And then you give it another shot. You want to go 10 rounds over 10 weeks, not 10 rounds all at once. Because they'll keep going circular. They'll do as many rounds as you want to right now and we'll go nowhere. It's like we're driving on a racetrack that's a loop. And they're like, we'll do as many laps as you want to, but we won't end up anywhere. So what you got to do is pull out of the conversation and give them some time to think about it. You don't have to cut them off, right? So everyone on the internet's like, cut them off. Cut ties. Go no contact. Go low contact. Like no contact, no contact, no contact. And it's really easy for people on the internet to tell you to go no contact because they feel like, yeah, fuck them. But you're the one who actually has to deal with the guilt. You're the one who has to deal with your family calling you, texting you. Why don't you call your mother? I can't believe that you didn't go home for the holidays. Don't you know that she carried you around for 9 months, popped you out of her uterus, and breastfed you for so long? And you have no heart, youngin'. It's like, the people on the internet aren't fielding those phone calls. And sometimes the people on the internet they're not wrong, right? Because sometimes it requires a lot of encouragement to go no contact. And they say, like, it really worked for me and this is the only way to do it because this is what worked for me. So, like, their heart is in the right place, I think. I hope. Some merit to it. But as we said, like, oftentimes we don't want to cut off our family. We want to repair things with our family. And sometimes that involves going no contact for a while and then trying to get back into things. But this is literally, what you do is you talk to them and you see what their understanding of what does sorry mean to you. Once someone says they're sorry, what does that do to the relationship? And the more that you kind of get them thinking and engage with conversation, like the better off you're going to be. And don't try to do it. Don't speed run it. Don't speed run the conversation. This is something we're talking like grinding, okay? For like, not even grinding, but like doing your dailies. Like instead of grinding 10 hours all at once, just do your dailies today, get whatever like your quest rewards are, and then like don't grind for diminishing returns. That's the attitude that you want to take when it comes to like maintaining relationships. You put in a little bit on a daily basis or a little bit on a weekly basis. Over time is going to be worth way more than like 10 hours all at once. So do your dailies with your mom. All right? Okay. So now we are going to make an announcement. Wait, how do I... Hold on. There we go. Okay. So, hold on, chat. Hold on, calm down. Calm down, chat. All right, so. Okay. So we have an announcement to make. So for a while, chat, y'all said I should write a book. And I have done that. And this is our first book. And it is How to Raise a Healthy Gamer. So I know it sounds kind of weird. But this book is for... This book is what should have been written 20 years ago. And this community would be in a different place if this book was written 20 years ago. So when I look at the work that I do, okay, I try to help y'all. And if we look at like why I do what I do. So why did I leave my job and, you know, quit my academic position at Harvard and all that good stuff? When I was finishing residency, I had some amazing teachers who gave me some amazing job opportunities. So someone even said, hey, we'll like build a video game addiction rehab for you. And you can run it and we'll like put up the capital and everything. Like we believe in the work that you're doing and stuff like that. And my problem was that if we look at what y'all need, I don't think that y'all can wait for me to become a researcher and do 10 years, 15 years, become the world expert in video game addiction or anything like that. Like there are all these options out there and then it leaves so many people behind. And so the problem that we face today as gamers is only getting worse. Parenting is getting harder. So the rates of autism and ADHD are on the rise, which means kids' brains are more prone to video game addiction. And if we really look at like, what are we going to do about this problem? I know that I'm here to help y'all and I help y'all most of my time is spent thinking about y'all. But if I really think about what would have the most impact, if I had to write one book before I die, and this is the way that I thought about it, what would that book be? It would be to help the next generation of kids, to help those of y'all that are becoming parents. And honestly, it was inspired by my own being a parent, right? So I'm a parent to 2 kids and they're awesome and they're fantastic. And what I realize is parenting is way harder. I mean, we talk about like problems with relationships. We talk about the economy. All that stuff is true for us, right? We're struggling. Adding parenting as a layer on top of that, when you have billion-dollar corporations that spend tens of millions or hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars a year to take a 9-year-old or 5-year-old or 2-year-old and get them addicted to a device. We're seeing the effect of it already with y'all. Right? You can't stop using a device. It's like, you know what we should do as a society? As part of toilets, the next upgrade for toilets is not some fancy bidet or seat warming or something like that. It's putting a phone charger into the side so that you can charge your phone while you're on the toilet. I guarantee you the charger that is used the most often will be the phone toilet charger, right? It's building Wi-Fi hubs in toilets, screens, touch screens on toilets. That's the next thing because that's what we do. We take it everywhere. Right? Someone's saying, I already have that. So I wrote this book and it's based on our work. We've been working with parents for about 4 years now, and many of y'all may not know this. And honestly, the reason is because parenting is hard. Like it's getting exponentially harder. Like it's hard to date right now. That's getting exponentially harder. But it's like your kids' minds are being pulled by this stuff. Right? It's crazy, like what they'll end up doing if you let them. And I think the problem is that most parents don't know what to do about this. Because they try to, it's just like the parent that we saw from today. Like, they try to restrict, they try to take it away, because you can see as a parent, like, this thing is screwing with your kid. So what do you do naturally as a parent? You take it away. When your kid is playing with a cactus and they have like all these like cactus spines like in their hand and they're hurting and crying, what do you do as a parent? You're like, remove the cactus. Take the danger away. That's our parental instinct. This is the first problem that we've really had in human history. I guess other addictions kind of qualify, but they're not as pervasive as this. Where you want to take it away and your kid wants more of it. That's what's different. Right? Because it's not like every kid grows up smoking. Like, so once the addiction starts, that's fine. We're talking about 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds. I don't know if y'all have walked down the grocery store aisle. You'll see kids are on their phone. 2-year-old is on the phone. In the car, on the phone. At school, it's a mess. And then all these problems kind of come out of it, like all these like echo chambers forming and all this kind of stuff. And like things just get worse and worse and worse. And the problem is that the parents are outgunned. Because what are you supposed to do as a parent? You were never taught how to do this. Your parents didn't have to deal with this stuff. So what are you supposed to do? There's a whole generation of kids that's going to be more screwed than we are. And I know that the majority of the people in our community are not parents, but that number is changing with each passing year. And the reason it's changing with each passing year is because people in our community are starting to be more compassionate towards each other. They're improving their social skills. They're getting into relationships. They're using WoW to get married. And then they're getting laid and having kids. Good job. And as our community turns into parents, and I think the average age of someone in our community is like over 30 now, right? Like, we need to help them. There's a whole generation of kids that we need to help. And I really think that's what it is. Now, I'm already thinking about number 2, and number 2 probably won't be a parenting book. I've got a couple good things in the pipeline, but this is our first book. Y'all asked me to write one. I've been working on it for a couple of years, and it's going to be published soon. So y'all can use !book to get, I guess, pre-order, I don't know, just like get access to it. And you guys can basically find the book anywhere where that books are sold. So we're going to show you all the cover one more time. But it is How to Raise a Healthy Gamer. Now, the other thing is, for those of y'all that are...
Are you serious?
What?
It's available for pre-order.
It is available for... Okay.
Not just...
Look, I wrote the thing, okay?
I know, but it's
Okay, it's available for pre-order. That's corrected. They know that now. Okay, I just write the thing. I don't know about all this stuff. All right? Okay, so one other thing that I will say, even if y'all are not parents, the one thing that I will say is, for those of y'all that are interested in relationship building and communication, this is the book. There are sections of this book, so like just to like explain a little bit about it. This is all about how to develop a relationship with your child. And the good news is that the skills in this book are going to apply to basically any relationship building. Okay? So even if y'all aren't parents and y'all are interested in like, okay, I want to learn how to communicate the way that Dr. K does. I want to learn how to foster relationships the way that Dr. K does. I'd strongly recommend y'all check out the book. And apparently it is available for pre-order. Okay? You can find it basically anywhere books are sold. And yeah, so that's our announcement. Book number 1 is complete. Is coming out, I think, in February or March. I'm not 100% sure. And then... yeah. And so I wrote it because I'm trying to help all the people that will grow into you. I wrote this book because I was thinking about what could I have done? Like, what would have changed the course of your life? And I think, honestly, it's your parents reading this book. A little late for that, but we're going to fix it with the next generation. Yeah. Spoiler the content? Yeah, I mean... So it hopefully will help y'all with relationships in general, because that's a big part of it, right? So a big part of it, first thing is to understand how gaming affects brains. And so if y'all are struggling with like gaming as well, it could absolutely be useful to you. It's geared a little bit more towards parents. And then it's more about, there's like mental health intersections with gaming, so ADHD and marijuana and stuff like that. But mostly it's giving a parents like a toolkit and a plan to fix the situations that we talked about. Right? It's to teach parents how to listen, because the nature of listening has changed. How to reconnect with your kid. Like, that's what it's really about. It's about repairing your alliance, getting on the same side. Okay? Dr. K, is the book good for self-reparenting? Honestly, probably not. And maybe Kruthi will come in here and say, no, don't say the book isn't perfect for everything. That's not the intended audience. If y'all want to learn how to foster relationships and you want to learn about how video games affect your brain and mental health, that it's good for. That I think is applicable to everybody. But the specific like regimens in there are really designed, the audience is parents. Yeah, so for those of y'all that wanted it for other things, don't worry, we're not done. This is the beginning, not the end. Okay? Hi.
Can you please shout out HackyZack17? He used an Audible credit to purchase the audio version.
Okay, so
HackyZack17.
HackyZack17 has used an Audible credit to purchase the audio version already. So HackyZack17, you may be the first purchaser of our first book.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very exciting.
Very exciting.
Do they know that you're narrating the audio?
And I'm narrating the audio. So you're going to hear me talking to you for hours and hours and hours. Okay? Yeah, so definitely check it out, y'all. It's a book that is made with love. And here's the other thing. So I wrote this book not because I'm an expert parent. I wrote this book because I'm one of y'all. So this is the thing, everyone says, we saw it today, but everyone says like, my parents don't understand, my parents don't understand, my parents don't understand. I wrote this book from your shoes, not your parents' shoes. Because the thing is, the parents today, like, we don't know how to communicate with them in order to listen. So I kind of like took y'all's side, if that makes sense. The reason I think the book is so good is because it shares with the parents the stuff that they never think about when it comes to gaming and their kids. It shares with them all the stuff that I wish my parents had known. As I listen to y'all over and over again and the problems that you struggle with, I try to represent those problems, right? So whether it's marijuana use or ADHD or autism, like explaining like, okay, why does a kid with autism, you can't just take away his game. So I'll just give you all just one example, okay? So one of the things that we explain in the book is that games are no longer games. Parents don't understand this. We call them video games. They're not games. These are careers, they're communities, they're friendships, they're romances. And so what parents don't understand is when you take a child's game away, you're not taking away a game. It's not entertainment. You're taking away their future. You're taking away their connections. You're isolating them. You're making them more lonely. You're also sabotaging their social relationships, because when you take away a kid's game, what happens the next day at school? You go to you go to school, all your friends are like, yeah, that was awesome last night when we played this guy and we I can't believe we won and we made like a comeback at the last second, and then you don't get to participate in that. What are y'all doing this weekend? Oh, let's all hop on and we'll do this, and like this DLC just got released, let's all play. You don't get to participate in that. So I don't think parents understand the impact that games have on kids. Positive impact. And so to help a parent really understand these kinds of things and really help the kid to listen to what a child wants from their life. And it's kind of like what we try to do with y'all. We try to listen to, okay, what do you want us to help you with? Tell us what you want your life to be. And we will do the work to smooth the path for you. We'll make it easy for you. We'll build a guardrail. We'll build stairs. We'll help you climb to the top. You tell us what you want out of life, and we'll help you build it. And what we really try to do in this book is share that philosophy with the parents, which is the philosophy that the parents have themselves, right? That's what they know they're supposed to do. The problem is they see you playing the game, and then suddenly it's like, And it's not even their fault, because the parents are like, I don't think it's so hard, because you see, if you're a parent, you see your kid getting sucked into this stuff. I mean, we heard of a case today where to cancel the WoW subscription, kid finds a laptop, starts skipping class, goes to the library, uses their allowance to buy game cards, right? Kid does so many things. And then what are you going to do as a parent? You're going to panic. Oh my God, this kid is not thinking straight. He's failing out of school. He's cutting class all because of this game. And so their reactions are completely normal and they don't help. And so what we're trying to do, I know that there's a lot of stuff, a lot of people in our community struggle because of the relationship that they had with their parents. When I really think about what is the largest amount of impact that I can have in this world, it's not actually focusing on y'all. It's trying to help the next generation of people. Because when I think about what if your parent was different, what would this community look like if every parent in this community, every person in this community, their parents listened to them more, helped them become the person that they wanted to be? Because what I hear from y'all over and over and over again is like, my parents were this way, am I screwed? And my first instinct was, no, you're not screwed, and here's how you fix it. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, what's the problem here? The problem here is that the parenting wasn't good. And not wasn't good, but, could be improved. And Travis is saying, I'm destroying my consumer base. You're damn right I am. You're damn right I am. My job is to destroy my consumer base. In Dota. Get wrecked, noobs. No, but seriously, that's our mission. Our mission here, I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart, may not be good a business model. Maybe Kruti will come in a second. But the mission from the bottom of my heart is for y'all to no longer need this. This channel, our work is done when our viewer count is 0. That's when our work is done. That's the goal. It's independence. Seriously. I want to play games, chat. Like, seriously. When y'all can take care of yourselves, then I get to go on vacation. I'm not kidding. I can go back to practicing clinical medicine and seeing patients and, whatever, playing video games, and maybe go back to working with esports teams or like whatever, like that. There's tons of stuff for me to do. But I can't do that yet because we're not done. Okay? So with that, from the bottom of my heart, I love y'all. Thank you so much for coming today. And by all means, check out How to Raise Healthy Gamer, How to Raise a Healthy Gamer. And you can pre-order it with !book. I got to bounce, but y'all take care. We'll see y'all this week sometime. Okay? Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you all so much for pre-ordering. Seriously, oh my God, gifted subs. If y'all have a choice between gifting subs and pre-ordering, pre-order. Okay?